Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits podcast. All right, let's go ahead and we'll make a video here. Another ghost of the week. This one, the random page from the ghostwikia.com website, giving me a location to talk about with regards to a particular ghost. So this one, when I was reading the information, it reminded me of one that I did just a couple of weeks back about George Lancel and the house that he purportedly haunts. This one is very, very similar in that there's one old location, particularly a house, that has one ghost in specific that seems to haunt it to this day. And the information is pretty fascinating. I love doing these kind of stories because it's so fascinating to, again, peel back the curtain on a particular house or a location and realize that there's so much history to it. Anytime you pass by that house, if all you're seeing is just a house, you're just seeing the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to the generations of people that have lived there and in some cases continue to live there, as is the case with this ghost. So what I'm talking about is the location known as the Eldon House, which you're looking at a picture of here. It's one of those locations there in Canada where it has its own kind of following of sorts. It's a national historic site now to this day, and people still visit it. It's one of those things where it brings in probably a small number of tourists, and then more importantly, a lot of the locals there visit it just on the off chance that, hey, it's one of those things that you can see, hear, and talk about and share it with others. Definitely not like, let's say, a landmark place that everyone flocks to, but again, everyone has those locations within your towns. You can probably cite a couple of homes that seem to have a famous following. Such is the case here. So just a brief history on the Eldon House and how it came to be. By the way, I don't know why it's called the Eldon House, because all of the information I'm about to present, nobody was ever named Eldon, at least that I could find. So if someone has that information as to why it's called the Eldon House, that would be great to hear. But here's what happened. The home has been around for quite some time. It was built back in 1834, so you have to go back quite a ways to see the earliest known history of this home. So much so that what you're looking at throughout some of this next couple minutes, these are either pictures of the home itself throughout various times, or in some cases, it seems like it was so early that they didn't even have photographs back then, and at least in that area, and instead there's like a painting of some sort. So quite fascinating again to see so much history from this particular home. And the reason why it was built was because it was built for a particular couple by the name of John and Amelia Harris. I tried to see if I could find some pictures of them, but again, the time period is so early that there seems to be no pictures existing, at least on the internet, that showcases them. But the reason for that it was built for them, it was done as a reward for the work that John Harris had done. John Harris was actually a captain of the Royal Navy. He was a naval officer there. And the location is actually, the home itself is located in London, Ontario, there in Canada. So that's where he ended up basically settling after he retired. But even when he retired, he still did a lot of public work. He ended up serving as treasurer of the London district for that location, and he did such a great job that many of his colleagues there, some of them presumably were pretty prominent people, decided, you know what, this guy, he deserves something. And so they decided as a reward to build him this house from scratch. It would be for him, his wife, and no kidding, 8 children. So pretty busy family. And what a great reward too, to think that, let's say you've already served your country, you're in retirement and you're continuing to serve your country, and then at that point the Canadian government decided, hey, this guy's doing such a fantastic work, because it turns out that yes, he managed London's money, the city's their money so well that the city there and basically the country itself decided, let's give him a free house, and they built it for him from scratch. So that's the earliest history of the home. And later on in life, back let's say to the 1900s, mid 1900s or so, the house eventually passed several people, but it stayed within the same family, the Harris family altogether. And by that point, I don't know if the people that were living there decided, you know what, it's time to move on, or if they weren't living there at all and decided, you know what, it's probably better in other people's hands. But eventually the Harris family of that generation decided to sign over the house to the city council, and in that way it became a historical monument of sorts and then stayed as a protected site. And it was smart of them to do this, because if in any manner whatsoever, if the family had decided, you know what, we're just not going to take care of the house, it's in our possession but we're just not going to manage it anymore, then it definitely would have gone into a state of living decay. And with this much history, it's good to see that the house instead became a historical site, and again, people visit it to this day. You can go there. I don't know if you have to necessarily schedule a tour, but you can absolutely visit it and then take pictures, see part of its history. They probably have tours as well, as far as guides showcasing you everything. So it's nice to see that this occurred. Now, where the ghost story comes into play is as follows. It actually does not have to do with the Harrises directly, but somebody that they knew in turn. The Harrises had a daughter. Her name was Sarah Harris. Very frequently, the family would house and home and host parties for many of the visiting officers of that area. It makes sense because, again, the main guy, Mr. Harris, John Harris, he's the one that was a retired Royal Navy officer. No doubt whenever he saw some of his fellow colleagues come in, let's say they were coming in from tour duty or just coming in on rest and relaxation, the good old R&R, then he would host them all together as a way of saying thank you, and then also probably catching up on things at the same time. And lo and behold, the daughter became very familiar with one of those officers by the name of Wenman Wynette. I believe that's his name. Again, no pictures as far as this guy Wenman. Tried to find them, but nothing really shows. Instead, what you're looking at is a picture of what he would have looked like, at least based on the costume or the design of the officer suits back then. So Sarah became acquainted with him. I don't know how long they lasted in terms of a relationship, but eventually it got to the point where at one particular instance, Wenman was going to attend, and I don't know how they communicated, but he had promised to her that yes, he would be there yet again for another party of sorts. And so the party was occurring. It was at night. There was the daughter, Sarah. She was there with other guests as well. And then all of a sudden, that's when this guy Wenman appeared. He purportedly just pretty much went straight into the home. I don't know if someone invited him in, like let's say they opened the door for him, or if he just managed to come in himself. But this is where it gets interesting. A lot of the guests, pretty much everyone there, including Sarah, saw him. But what instantly stood out is that Wenman was reportedly very pale and blank looking. In other words, he was not addressing anyone. He seemed to just be staring straight forward as he walked through the house altogether. And then at one point, the daughter Sarah eventually went to greet him, but when this happened, this guy Wenman didn't even react to her. It's almost as if she was not even there, like she didn't even exist. So there he was, just walking through the guests and passing by them. Walking through the house and passing by all the guests. And then finally he went into the dining room. And this, for all intents and purposes, he looked real. Like, people weren't guessing at this point that he was something else. He looked real. He looked like a real person, like it was him, but for the fact that he was pale looking and had that disoriented, blank looking face on him. But what happened in the dining room shocked everyone, because as he was in the dining room, all of a sudden he just disappeared straight into thin air, just flat out disappeared. Obviously everyone got confused, and maybe some of them got excited, wondering, what was going on, what did they just see? And so the next morning there was the idea, hey, something could have happened to this guy Wenman, because obviously he was no longer around the home, and whatever they just saw could have indicated that, hey, something was definitely up. So they began to do a search for him, because that later that night he never truly showed up again. So whatever they saw was not him, obviously, and then later on he never showed up at all. And so the search began, and then lo and behold, they found him, but unfortunately he was already dead, because they found him floating in the middle of what's called the Thames River there. So quite creepy stuff. Because also when they found him and he was floating dead, they discovered he had a pocket watch, and his pocket watch, it had died, but it had died people figured this out. It had died at the very same exact time as the previous night when they had seen his ghost walking through that Eldon house. So quite freaky, because when you think about it, it tells you that there was this guy Winman, for whatever reason, he was dying there on the Thames River. He was found this eventually, covered near the sandy area, but there he was dying, and at that very same time, somehow, some way, his ghost is probably the best way to describe it. His ghost was walking then straight into the home, almost as some kind of meaning of some sort, who knows, but it was there to catch their attention, and then sure enough that caught it, and then that's what led them to his body. Whether they would have found the body eventually without seeing the ghost, I don't know, but it does make you think that it was there for a reason. As far as why this guy Winman was dead there in the middle of the Thames River, nobody really knows to this day. Maybe he drowned, maybe he drank too much, fell over, maybe he was knocked out, he got into a fight, who knows, but nobody has an explanation for exactly what happened. The most common theory is that sure enough he had drowned in the Thames River, but how he would drown, no one knows, because presumably he would have had to have waded into the river somehow in order to drown within it, as opposed to, let's say, getting knocked over or falling in accidentally, something along those lines. But ever since that particular day, his ghost still does apparently the same routine at the Eldon House. So if you're ever there in London, Ontario, again there in Canada, and you happen to be visiting the home, if you're lucky enough, or in some cases unlucky, depending on how some people see this perspective, then you will see the ghost of Wenman Wyniat roaming the house in the very same manner that he was doing it all those years back when his ghost first appeared in front of all those guests. People say that he still walks around the house. He repeats the very same act that he had that night, and then sometimes people say that they see him otherwise roaming the house, just looking around altogether, still searching for whatever it was he was searching for that time of night. Creepy stuff, so very fascinating. If anyone, again, has more information, maybe something that I might have missed, it'd be great to hear. But if you're near that location and you want to check out this house, not just for history, but again for a chance to see this ghost, that'd be great. That'd be a great opportunity as well. People also apparently see orbs whenever they take pictures in the house, but that's about it. I didn't really read or see anything else as far as the usual traits involving ghosts. And again, for all intents and purposes, he seems to be the only ghost that haunts that location. None of the other family members, in other words from the Harrises, does so as well. So what do you guys think? The Eldon House, another video dedicated to a house that has to have one particular ghost haunting it. Very fascinating stuff. So alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.